I ended up going to Rolling Stone magazine, and I was the only Black person. Also in New York City, you can't step outside in New York and not see a Black person. Yet in my office, I was the only Black person.
Welcome to Color at Work, a safe space for sharing and strengthening the Black and Brown experience in the workplace. My name is Sofia Medina Andrade, and I believe in the efficiency of diversity and inclusion to achieve a more dignified and fair working world. Hello, community. In today's episode, I will be talking with Ayana Byrd, a multifaceted African American that in her 25 years of career has worked as a journalist for magazines such as The Rolling Stones, Glamour, Vogue, and many others. Ayana is also a screenwriter and the author of the award-winning book Hair Story. Her voice has contributed to panel discussions about culture and about the representation of Black women in popular culture. Hi, Ayana, and very welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to talk with you.
It's a pleasure having you here. Ayana, can you share with us the story behind the amazing professional that you are?
I began my career in 1995. As soon as I graduated from college, I started working at Vibe magazine, which is a music magazine that now is online only, but then it was a print magazine and it covered Black music, hip hop and R&B mostly. I knew that I wanted to be a journalist since I was 8 years old. And as soon as Vibe magazine came out, the magazine was not even 2 years old when I started working there. I knew that was where I wanted to work. I just thought the journalism in the magazine, the photography in the magazine, the way that they talked about the artists that they interviewed, it was everything that I wanted to be. It just felt exactly like what I wanted to do with my journalism. And so when I got there at the magazine, the staff were more amazing than what the magazine was. All of us were young. The oldest person on the staff was 27 years old. I was 21 years old. We all worked so hard. We all loved the music that we were covering. We loved the artists that we were talking about. Everyone was really creative and talented, and most of us were Black. It was like walking into a dream. But then I also got paid. I mean, not very well because magazines don't pay very well, but I learned so much working there, and being surrounded by Black people who were as talented as the staff there changed me forever. It just made me realize I could do whatever I wanted to do because I was just surrounded by all of these amazing people doing like great work. So I stayed at Vibe, and when I left there, I ended up going to Rolling Stone magazine, and I was the only Black person. Also in New York City, you can't step outside in New York and not see a Black person. Yet in my office, I was the only Black person, and I was only one of three people of color, and the only one of us who was Black. So for me, I was angry. I was angry that there had not been more effort to hire Black people. I knew there were incredible Black music journalists because I just worked with them for many years at Vibe. And the music that Rolling Stone covered, Rolling Stone's a music magazine in general, rock music, all kinds of music. But a lot of the music that they were covering was Black music because that's what a lot of popular music is. And yet we were not on the staff. And so instead of feeling like I didn't belong or instead of feeling out of place, I felt angry that because it seemed like a reflection of them, not of me, that there were no other Black people there. So while I was at Rolling Stone, I got my first book deal to write the book on Black hair. And it was an idea that I had come up with along with another woman. We'd come up with the idea when we worked together at Vibe. We were very young when we decided to write the book. We were 24 when we got the idea. And again, to take it back to Vibe, it was such a dynamic, creative place that we didn't think it was crazy that we were so young and so new in our careers and decided to write a book. It just felt like, of course, we're interested in Black hair. There's not a book on Black hair. we've both done work before on Black hair in as far as papers and magazine articles, and so we should be the ones who write the book. And so we did. We wrote the book. We got the book deal while I was working at Rolling Stone, and so I left Rolling Stone so I could go and write the book. Hair Story came out in February of 2001. And then by the time the book came out, I was freelance writing for different magazines. I started to write for some women's magazines, doing beauty writing and health writing, and then I was still doing music and entertainment writing for just a lot of different magazines. And then 9/11 happened in the United States and it changed everything. The country went to war. I was living in New York. I knew someone who died in the World Trade Center. And so for I think anyone living in New York at that time, it made me determined to do as much as I could with my life because everything all of a sudden felt so unsure. It was such a scary time in New York. And so I spent the year after 9/11 going on tour for Hair Story, still freelance writing, also really unhappy with the direction the country was going in politically and deciding what to do about it. So when we started the Iraq War, I decided I was ready to leave. And so my then boyfriend and I moved to, first we moved to Italy, we moved to Florence, and then we moved to Barcelona. And there were a lot of Americans at that time who decided that they did not want to be in the US. But because I worked freelance and I worked for myself, I was able to leave. I didn't have to go to an office every day. As long as I had the internet and a telephone, I could be anywhere. So I was living in Spain and working on my second book, which is called Naked. And it's an anthology that I edited and created with another Black woman. Her name is Akiba Solomon. It's 26 different Black women talking about their relationship with their body and what they think about their bodies and what they love and what they hate about it, and just talking about body image. And so that book came out in 2005. By that time, I'd moved back to New York, mostly because the dollar was doing terribly against the euro. And I needed to move home because I just wasn't making any money living in Spain because all of my money was coming from the United States. So I moved back and I went back to Vibe. Vibe had started a women's magazine. And so I started working there. And when I left Vibe, I went to Glamour magazine. I'm not sure if there's a Glamour in Portugal. I know there's a Glamour Spain, but I worked at Glamour in the United States. I was there for 3 years and I left in 2010. And that was the last editorial staff job that I've had. I went back to school. I got my master's degree in fiction. I'm writing a novel, which I'm almost done. And I also started doing screenwriting. So I wrote a TV script. I applied for a fellowship, and you had to write a script for the fellowship. I did not get the fellowship, but my script did get in the hands of a woman who creates television shows and movies. Her name is Tracy Oliver, another Black woman. She's amazing. She wrote the movie Girls Trip and the movie Little, which I don't know what that was called in Portugal, but Tracy's incredible. She's young, smart, so talented Black woman. And she read my script and she liked it. And she was casting the writer's room for a new show about 4 Black women in New York that's going to be on Amazon. And she hired me for the writer's room. And so I made the move over to TV writing just last year. The show actually starts streaming this year. So to be so excited, the end of this year it comes out in December on Amazon, and I worked on the second season, so I won't be able to actually see what I wrote on television this year, but just seeing the show will be exciting. And so now I'm doing more work in television, and I'm finishing my novel, and I still write magazine articles, not as much as I used to before. Mostly now, if I'm writing for a magazine, it's health stories. I've been doing a lot of articles on the racial disparities between Black and white Americans in the United States. There's the health outcomes for Black Americans are much scarier compared to white people, and it's mostly for reasons that have to do with economics and racism. And so I've been doing a lot of articles looking at that.
Whoa, I truly can see the beauty of your journey because not only you did a lot of great things with your career, You have experienced different environments, different sorts of magazines, ways of working, shifted careers. But also, in the meantime, a lot was happening in the world. And the beautiful thing is that you have adapted, you have shifted through all those changes and made a beautiful work with your career. This makes me also think, how was for you to return to the US and work again physically in a magazine?
I was very depressed to come back. I only came back because of money and because the dollar was performing so badly against the euro. That's the only reason that I came back. So it's one of the only times in my life I've made a decision that's based just on money. I'm not used to that. So it was hard for me to come back. So I went to Glamour and I was back to being the only Black person. Like, so, you know, many almost 10 years after I'd left Rolling Stone, once again, I was in New York City at a magazine with a really large staff, and I was the only Black editor. And again, I was angry because once again, I felt like that's intentional. There's so many amazing Black women journalists. It doesn't make sense that more of us weren't working at Glamour and writing for Glamour. Glamour is a really, I mean, now it's only online, but then it was like one of the biggest magazines in the country. And so I really made it a goal that I was able to achieve, to hire as many Black women writers to write for the magazine while I was there. And so that's, I think, the thing that I'm proudest of about the 3 years that I was there.
That's very inspiring, you know? And how has that worked actually?
I'm a really good editor, and these were really good writers. So we would do stories that were good. So no one could question, you know, who is this person? I've never heard of them. And I would think, well, you've never heard of them because you weren't looking in the right places. These are people who have written books, or they've been in all of these other magazines, but just places that were not on the radar of the white editors at
Yeah.
Glamour. So I was glad that I was able to get these women's names in the magazine, and to also make the editors there realize that they could expand who they were thinking of when they needed an article written.
You know, I'm thinking, well, first of all, it was really great what you did and very inspiring. But at the same time, I'm thinking, how was the environment there? Because, as you said, you were the only one. And I'm wondering, how was the environment for you and also for the new Black employees that you brought to the magazine?
Working there myself, it was hard because, again, the magazine was in the middle of New York City. It's on Times Square. Now it's not. Now it's at the World Trade Center, but then it was at Times Square. And so every day I would leave my life in Brooklyn, surrounded by Black people. I would get on the subway, surrounded by Black people. I would get off the subway at Times Square, surrounded by every kind of person you can think of. And then I would go into this office and I would just be surrounded by white people. And the world is happening outside. So there were things happening in the news. There were police shootings and killings of Black men, things that we're still seeing today, but that we're not getting the same news coverage as it does now. But I was still, or any Black person knowing what was going on, we were still angry and sad and upset, but I had no place in my office. There was no one I could share it with, or no one who really understood what I was experiencing or why this was so important. And it was um it was an isolating feeling, and it also made me angry because, again, I was there from 2007 until 2010. Obama became president while I was working there, so that helped in that I got to see the staff was really, really, really supportive of Obama during the campaign and also when he became president. And so I felt like at least that gave us a shared thing to be excited about and to be in support of. But I'd say beyond Obama's becoming president, you know, now it's, that feels like a million years ago that Obama became president. But at the time, it was so exciting and seemed like it meant the country was moving in this amazing direction. I mean, that was not true, but we thought it at the time.
It's funny because when you said that it feels like the elections had happened years ago, I don't feel like that, you know. I still can remember today the feelings that I had and how excited I was and was rooting for him. And I think Black people around the world were also rooting for him, and that it was something that meant a lot to all of us.
It seemed obvious, right? Like, here, finally. And, Obama is not a revolutionary. He was a politician. He wanted to be president of the United States. That's a very specific thing. But there was such hope. Like, oh, it felt so hopeful. And it felt like we had changed direction.
You know, while you were speaking, I was just like thinking, after the election, everything went back to normal, no? So, how was your daily day at Glamour, the interaction with your colleagues, and also how did they receive the Black journalists that you brought in?
For me, every day, it was hard. No one was mean to me. So it's not like it was hard because there was never blatant racism. However, I just felt very alone, like the word that you used. Also, soon after, so I began working there in May. And in August, so just a couple of months after I was there, a woman, so when I first arrived, I didn't have an office. I sat out in like a room with, like, it looks like a newsroom where you just have lots of desks sitting next to each other. And a woman who I sat across from, she was a fashion writer, and she had a fashion blog, and she often got asked to do talks about like fashion do's and don'ts, because Glamour had this very popular column called Do's and Don'ts. And so this woman who again sat across from me, I have natural hair. I have a lot of hair. So I have enough hair for three people. And it was August in New York, so it's very humid. So my hair is even bigger than normal. And this woman was invited to a law firm to give a talk about fashion, corporate fashion do's and don'ts. And so she had a PowerPoint presentation, and one of the photos in the presentation was of someone with an afro, and the writing on it said, "Just say no to the fro."
That's terrible.
And so it's the idea that this is not hair for the corporate workplace. And so then a white lawyer who was in the presentation found that offensive and said something. And it ended up becoming this very big media story. Like, it was huge. It was in blogs, it was on TV, it was a big deal. And none of us at Glamour knew who had done it. We didn't know. Like, when the story came out, it just said that a fashion editor at Glamour. But there are a lot of fashion editors at Glamour. So no one knew. At first we were like, is this even true? But yes, it was true. And we found out who did it. And I thought, you were looking at my hair as you wrote that, because of her computer monitor was literally in front of, like, how we were situated. She always saw me when she was looking at her computer screen because I was right on the other side of it with my very big hair. So that happened with, just a couple of months after I got there. And so this was when people still wrote letters to the editor, like actual letters in the mail, because this was before Twitter. So they were just getting letters every day from Black women who were canceling their subscription or couldn't believe it or were so upset. And they really weren't sure how to handle it because it was a crisis that I think they couldn't understand, because I don't think they understood how significant Black hair, like what a big deal Black hair is to Black people and especially Black women. So aside from me just being angry, especially because I knew that this person was looking at me as they wrote this, it also, editors there wanted me to help them understand how to handle it. Well, that's not my job. I had nothing to do with this. You're only asking me because I'm the Black person. Also, I'm an expert on Black hair because of my book. So
Exactly, that's the thing. I was thinking of it, so they knew, right?
yes, like the irony that it happened there, and I'm the person who works there. But and I actually write about it. And we updated Hair Story. We added two new chapters, and in the one of the new chapters, we actually write about this entire incident. I don't say that I was a part of it because Hair Stories is a history book; it's not personal. But I was there while it was all happening, and I think because I'd only been at the magazine for a few months, For me, it really set the tone of what it was like. Oh, like, because this person who wrote it was someone I was very friendly with. We sat next to each other. She helped me, when I first started. She told me where things were. She was very kind,
That's so terrible, honestly.
and yet this still happened. And the magazine did not know how to handle it, and they kept thinking it would die down, and it did not, because it was offensive and it was crazy. So I think I definitely put on some kind of armor, right? Like, I was going in there every day. The global recession started while I worked there. So, and also it was the same time that print magazines started to shut down. So I knew I couldn't go back to freelance anytime soon because the economy was doing terribly, especially in publishing. So I thought, well, this is where I'm going to be until the economy gets better. And so I would just walk in every day with sort of armor on. But like, I'm a very pleasant, very nice person. So I don't think my coworkers realized that I had armor on, but I just lowered my expectations of what it would be like to work there. And I just tried very hard to do my work. I did become friends with a couple of people there. So by the time I left, there were two or three other Black editors. Well, two Black editors who I knew, and then one Black woman in the fashion department. But the fashion department was like, she was in a whole different part of the office. I never saw her, but I knew that she was there. And by then, also, like I said, I had brought in these Black women as writers. So even though the other editors only knew those women over email or maybe over a phone call, those women that I helped get into the magazine had done such great work because they're such great writers that it also showed these editors how good I was at my job, right? Like, I don't have to just hire the same people that you've been hiring all along. I can bring in these new people and this is what they can do. And so I think it also gave me some space from them. But there were many other things that happened. Like, there was an art photo that was supposed to run. I used to edit articles about body image. And so this was an article of women, all kinds of women, talking about the part of their body that they love. So it could be anything. I love my hair. I love my knees. I love my feet. It doesn't matter. And then why? And so there was a woman talking about how she loved her butt. I don't remember if the woman was Black. I don't remember any. I just remember somebody loved their butt. And the photo, we weren't running photos of the women with the words. It was just like pictures of models, not pictures of the actual women. And so the photo that they ran was like a picture of a Black woman and her butt, but it was a very, 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 very sexual image. And it was an image that really played into a lot of stereotypes around Black women and their butts. And none of the other photos in the article looked like that. And so I was like, oh, we can't run this picture. This is very, very sexualized, very calling attention to this woman's butt, very playing into stereotypes. Can we change it? And no one would back me up. So normally, if that happens, your supervising editor would talk to the art department and the art department would change it. But my supervising editor was like, I don't understand. She just didn't agree with me. She thought I was making a big deal out of nothing. She would not have the conversation for me. So I went to the art director. The art director could not believe she had to talk to me about this. And I was so stubborn and wouldn't leave her office that she finally changed it. But it took more than an hour out of my life to change a tiny photo on a page just because no one thought I had any idea what I was talking about. But any Black woman, if you saw this picture, would understand why it was a problem. But things like that happened all of the time. I think that if there had just been any Black editors at the top of the editorial staff, maybe that wouldn't have been, I would have had an ally who was more senior than I was. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Having more Black people in higher positions would have such a big impact. And I wouldn't say make sure that these situations wouldn't happen, but at least make sure that when those situations would happen, that we would have someone to back us up and also to show the other people in higher positions that, okay, there is a world outside of your bubble, and those things affect real people.
Yes, exactly. And it's exhausting. It's so tiring, but we're also still have to go and do the rest of our job, but we're so tired, and where do we turn?
Of course, it's exhausting. It's asking too much from a human being. But also, there is something that you've mentioned, and I would like to have you exploring that. You mentioned that you have started to armoring yourself. Can you share with us some of the strategies that you have used?
I used all of my vacation days, which probably to someone who lives in Europe does not sound funny, but most Americans do not use their vacation time. It's ridiculous. I don't know why. I did. I knew that I had to always take care of myself and get away when I could. And so I used my vacation days. I also took advantage of the fact that, like, one part of my job was come up with ideas around whether it was body image or relationships or anything, and to pitch those ideas and to get approval to do longer articles. So one of the things that I did was I spent as much time as possible coming up with story ideas that I would have wanted to read. And often that wasn't something that you would think would be in the magazine, but it helped me to know that I was working on things that I found were important and that I also thought would be important for glamorous readers to read. So whether it was a body image story, but also I worked with this one woman who's an author. Her name is also Ayana Mathis, and she wrote an article, a personal essay about growing up with a mother who was mentally ill, and it was just her and her mother, and it was a memoir about her childhood with her mother, and it was really beautiful. Ayana's Black, and I thought just a really important story to tell, but something I had to, I don't want to say fight for it because it wasn't a fight, but I definitely had to stand up to do it and keep repeating that I thought it could be done and I thought it could be really good. That was one of the things that I did to prepare myself. It could have been easier to pitch other stories or to pitch other writers to attach to stories, but I really always tried to do what I believed in. That helped. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay there forever. So I always kept trying to figure out what will I do next. So that always helped, like having a future plan. I knew that at some point the economy would get better and then I could figure out I thought I was going to go back to Barcelona. I did not go back to Barcelona, but that helped. I think knowing that I didn't have to define myself 100% by being there helped me a lot. Also, at the same time, I was always being asked to give talks or to give interviews about Black hair because of my book Hair Story. And so I always was working on things that were about me and that were about Black women and that were just about things that I really, really cared about that had nothing to do with that job, that really were things that I had accomplished before I had gotten there. So that also helped. Like remembering, oh, I do this and I'm good at this and I'm recognized for this. And I could focus on that when things got hard. I also took walks every day. I mean, that sounds like such a corny answer, but it really helped so much. Times Square is crazy. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's hectic and there's cars and there's people and it's so loud. But just one block away, there's a park. And I would every day leave my desk and go to the park and walk around the park, even if I only had 10 minutes. And that helped me a lot. I would always feel better when I came back in the office after I left the park. I was able to find a couple of people who I felt some kind of connection with. And I think we were a support group to each other. So that also helped a lot. And they may not have been able to understand what it was like to be a Black person working there, but we were all able to support each other when things were difficult.
You know, I appreciate that you shared with us those strategies that you have put it in place. I believe that they can become tips for people that are going through the same or that are going through something similar, you know?
Yeah.
And you actually brought a great point. You mentioned the importance of having a support group at work. As you said, those were people that may have not known how it is to be a Black person, but just the fact that you had someone you were comfortable to talk with about things that were annoying you at work, in the place in which the situations were happen, this is actually really, really good. And this makes me want to hear your opinion on how we can fight the lack of diversity at work.
I think one way that I've done, and that's also been done for me throughout my career, is I have never, ever wanted to be the only Black woman at a job or in a room or in any kind of professional space. And so every time I have an opportunity to bring another Black woman in, I use it. And other people have done that for me as well. So I talked about, many, many years ago, I started Vibe magazine in 1995. And still, I get work through people who I met in 1995 at Vibe because they know I do a good job and they know what I specialize in. And if they hear about something that they think I would be good for, they recommend me. And I do the same thing. I think a lot of times, say Glamour, they had never heard of us because they'd never heard of these writers that I brought in because they didn't have to. They could just ignore the fact that so many Black women were out there doing great journalism. But then I came and I brought a couple of more in. And I know some of those women then brought in other women when I stopped working there. And I think so that puts the responsibility, that this part of my answer is putting the responsibility on us, right? But I think if we can always, if there's ever an opportunity to bring someone else in the room with us, use it. And the other thing I think is to do things like this, right? And again, this answer puts the responsibility on Black women, but when I came to Lisbon, I talked about how the city embraced me. And one reason was because I knew Black people there who introduced me to other people who helped me to feel as though I had a support group. And I think those things can help open doors. And they can also, when you're faced with something, a microaggression or just an aggression in a workplace, I think it helps to know that we have a support group and that we have people there who will go to bat for us. And I think we have to find the people who will have the hard conversations with us before the conversations get hard. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense, believe me.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, I keep saying these things that do put the responsibility of how to change it on us. But I think part of the reason I do that is because I trust Black women so much more than I trust other groups of people that I think if I trust us to be able to help do these things, even though we should not have to, it's not our responsibility to change a system that's hostile to us. But I do think that changes when we work together, even though it should not have to be on us to do it.
I understand you when you say that it's putting the responsibility on us, but it's also a matter of empowering ourselves and showing to our community that we do believe in each other.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, that's so important because I think they count us out. I think they think that we are not as strong and as such a network of people as we are.
I'm actually really glad that you're saying this. Not only has your own opinion, but has a result of your personal experience. It's so powerful. And yeah, this also makes me curious. Have you had mentors that have guided you throughout your career? How has it worked for you?
So I always laugh because I always think I never had a mentor. I have a very good friend, another Black woman. She's a writer, and she really believes in mentors. Like she has these very structured mentors. She's someone's mentor. That means a very structured thing. People have mentored her in these very structured ways. And I'm always like, oh, wow, I missed out. I never had that. What I've had are Black women who I don't think would ever consider themselves my mentor, but who I learned so much from watching them, working alongside them. So there's this woman I know, her name is Linda Villarosa. She's a Black journalist. She lives in Brooklyn. And Linda used to be at Essence magazine. Linda lived across the street from the woman that I wrote Hair Story with. It just happened they were neighbors and they were the only two Black people on the street and they became friends. And so when Linda found out we were writing this book, she's a few years older than us and was already a published author. And she just opened her home, like literally opened the front door of her home and opened her email and her phone and said if we ever needed anything. She just gave us so much advice, put us on the phone with people. Linda still gives me work to this day. If she hears about something that she's not able to do, she'll pass my name along if I'm good for it. And Linda was the first Black woman I knew who was a freelance journalist writing. After she left Essence, she became a freelance journalist who was writing books and whose life looked very much like a life that I wanted to have. I just watched how Linda did it. And she was so generous with her advice, with her contacts, and with work support that I just learned. I mean, it's amazing to me the things that I learned from her. There's another woman named Harriet Cole who used to be the fashion editor at Essence, but then she left Essence and she opened her own company. She did a lot of different things with the company. She consulted and she wrote and just all these different things. And I, for a year, was her office manager. So, because she'd been at Essence for so long, a lot of the people who would come into her office were Black women who used to work at Essence. Black women doing these dynamic things. Like one of her best friends is a furniture designer, and another Black woman who owned an eyeglass company. And I had never been around all of these Black female entrepreneurs ever. I was 23 when I started working for her. And I had never met Black women owning their own business, especially all of these different kinds of businesses. Like her friend who was a furniture designer, she loved furniture. She just loved furniture. So she learned how to design it. And then the woman who was the eyeglass designer, she'd always worn glasses and she never liked the glasses she could find. So she learned how to make her. I mean, these like really dynamic women. And all of a sudden I thought, I can do this. I can be my own business person, not designing furniture, but I can be freelance. I can create my own professional life. I do not have to work for a company. I learned that directly watching what Harriet did. So she wasn't my mentor in a formal way, but it was like I can still contact her and ask her a question, and she's always been very honest and upfront about the challenges of being an entrepreneur, like the great things, but then also the things to be careful and the things that she wishes that she'd done differently, or the things that she would do now if she was starting her business. And so I always think of Linda and Harriet as these like unofficial mentors that I had, because they both made me realize that this life that I wanted was possible. I've never officially mentored anyone, but I do know people have told me when I wrote Hair Story and then I wrote my second book, all of a sudden they realized that they could also write a book. It wasn't something that other people did, it was something that they could do. And so I think I've been people's mentors in the same way that people have mentored me in this very unofficial way.
Unofficial way, but beautiful. Really, really beautiful and empowering. It's just amazing. You had representation from amazing Black women. You could see their journeys, and feel inspired by their journeys. And this is just, gosh, this is amazing, honestly. And the strength that this has, is beautiful. And seeing how effective it was for you is just inspiring, honestly.
It didn't just change my work life, it changed my life. I was able to see that how I wanted to live in all ways was possible.
It's so great to hear that you have done, because also you can see it, in your career. You have done such amazing things while enjoying your life. Thank you for sharing your story with us. But before letting you go, I would like to ask you if you have a message, an advice for all Black women that are working and still figuring life out. What would you tell them?
So that would be one piece of advice, is just to like attach yourselves to things even if it doesn't have an immediate financial payoff right away, because it'll just educate you and lead to the next thing and lead to other people, right? It can just lead to people who might be a formal mentor or just a support network. Done that a lot. I try to say yes to as many opportunities that come along as possible, unless my gut feeling is just telling me this is feels like a disaster. And sometimes it has not worked out at all, but sometimes it's really led me to these things, like in these opportunities, like when I got my master's degree in fiction, which ended up leading me to Lisbon, which ended up changing, like taking me in this whole different direction that's been amazing in my life. I decided to go back to grad school. It was just a fluke. I was like, am I doing that? Like, I'd never been thinking about going back to school, but I was approached to do it and I just dove in, and it was hard work, but it was such a payoff and changed everything. That would be my other advice, like not to feel like you're ever too old or too established in your career to try something new. I was 40 or 41 when I started graduate school. And in this 2-year program, I was like 42 or 43 when I moved to Lisbon. I was 46 when I had my son. If women believe the things that the world tells us about what we're not supposed to do by a certain age, we will all stop doing anything once we were 28 years old. And I think the biggest way that I live my life is I never think about age stopping me from doing something. So like, oh, I'm going to start this whole career as a TV writer at 47. That doesn't feel crazy to me at all. It feels exciting to me that like there's still things that excite me after a long career. I think that's my biggest advice, like not to listen to anyone. Everybody has an opinion on what Black women, what we're supposed to be like, what we're supposed to like, what we're not supposed to like, how we're supposed to think, how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to dress, how we're supposed to wear our hair, at what age we're supposed to do certain things. I think my biggest advice is just listen to yourself. And anytime that what you're thinking you should or shouldn't do is based on like someone else or society's opinion, just don't listen. I know that sounds like a cheesy magazine article, but honestly, that's how I've lived my life. I mean, that's how I was able just to become a mother at 46. I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. I don't care. You'll never find an article that's like, yeah, go be a mom at 46. Everyone's like, that's crazy. But it's not. It's like the best thing that I've ever done. And I think Black women, everyone wants to tell us how we're supposed to act. And so I think the reason I've been able to have this career that's gone to all these different countries and taken all these different approaches, books, magazines, the internet, TV, is because I just don't listen to what it is that these institutions that don't respect Black women tell me a Black woman is supposed to live like.
I'm so inspired by you, Ayana.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about this podcast. Cannot wait to start listening to it.
Thank you for accepting to talk to me. I'm pretty sure that after this conversation, our listeners will be curious about you. So, in case they want to get in touch with you, how and where can they find you?
Oh, my website, ayanabyrd.com. So AYANABYRD.com. You can contact me on there.
Great, I'm pretty sure people will reach out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Color at Work. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. Until next time.